Show your support for your favorite pro wrestling podcast that is by wrestling fans for wrestling fans. Donate to the Power of Pro Wrestling podcast today on Streamlabs. Link is in the description below. This is the Power of Pro Wrestling, a podcast by wrestling fans for wrestling fans. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. Welcome to the show. This is your host, Robert Red.
I'm Chris Honig, and thank you so much for joining us right here on this very special and a very good new year to you as well.
Yeah, so glad to have you back on the show, Mr. Cornbread. How was your 2017?
Controversial, but good, but nevertheless, all good. We hope you had a great year as well. And hey, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, or hey, listen to this podcast right here, Shout Engine, iTunes, and find us on Google Play, not only for this but all other episodes as well. We have a little something, I guess you could say. We really did go into deep into our notes and deep into our journalism skills, and decided to pull out this question, and it concerns pay-per-view and streaming and all that good jazz. I'll let you. It's best for you to kind of get us into the mood, so to speak.
Okay. Well, with this topic we're discussing, it will deal with pay-per-view, and the sides for the debate will be if pay-per-view should be on paid television or if it should stick to streaming services such as the WWE Network. New Japan has New Japan World. You have the Global Force Network, I believe, is up to.
It'll just be Global Wrestling Network, not Global Force.
Yeah, well, Global Wrestling Network. So basically, that's what we're going to be debating today. Now, you will have 2 minutes to present your case, and I'll have 2 minutes to present my side. And then at the end, you guys can decide who won the debate. So, as usual, guest, you get to go first. Present your side.
This question, I really had almost a little bit of an iffy case as far as, this question was concerned. But really going through the numbers and all of that, it's almost as if this one should not even be a quote-unquote debate. Pay TV is the way to go for this reason. Of course, for pro wrestling, it's a little bit different now because you have the advances of Fight TV app and all of that, and it's really not helping your pay TV. But I think the money is with pay TV because if you really go through sports in the last 10 years, the money has been with pay television. And here's why. UFC, everyone thought that UFC should have their own streaming service. UFC started that deal. And what happened? Hardly anybody even subscribed to that network. And here's a bonus. The numbers for pay TV were up over 85% compared to numbers for streaming. Now, could this be for wrestling? I think the numbers would say yes. So I'll say in support of the company and support of professional wrestling, it needs to, if you have pay TV, go for pay TV and support it. But the people that are providing the services to get your pay-per-view money, they need to bring it. Storylines and everything. They need to give you the ultimate pay-per-view experience, especially for 3 hours. So I say stick with pay TV. It's common sense. It's business.
Okay, well, great points, but I totally disagree with you. Pay-per-view should be on a streaming service such as the WWE Network, stuff like that. And I'm going to break this down. I'm going to bullet point it 3 simple reasons. One, it's cheaper for the consumer. A traditional pay-per-view, when it was on pay TV, ran anywhere from $40 to maybe even $60. So with the WWE Network that they have, it is $9.99. So it's a lot cheaper for your consumer. Also, with it being cheaper for the consumer, it's going to roll into my next bullet point, is the potential to make more money. Now, that sounds stupid when you think, oh, it's cheaper for the consumer, so we're going to make less money. Well, if it's cheaper, consider your buy rate could be more if a product or service is offered at a cheaper rate. Like, say, at the $60 mark, say only one person bought the pay-per-view, but if it's $9.99 and 10 people bought it, you make $40 profit versus one person buying the $60. So you have a potential to make more money for that. Also, with this streaming service, you're not tied to watching the pay-per-view on a TV set that's set up in your room. With the WWE Network, and no, I'm not being paid to say this, you can watch it on your phone, you can watch it on your tablet, you can watch it on a Roku. So it's portability for watching pay-per-view. So it allows you to easier access. It's that convenience factor that a lot of people like having, such as watching Netflix or Hulu. You're not stuck to watching it on a TV. You can watch it on your laptop. You can watch it on your phone. You can watch it on your tablet. So just a lot of portability of the watching pay-per-view, and also the on-demand factor. I could even bring that into effect, because on pay TV, you really didn't get much of a window to rewatch the pay-per-view. If you missed anything, you'd have to record it on either a DVR or something like that.
There was one instance where, bottom line, you're offered the replay, and you not only are you offered the replay on pay TV immediately following the pay-per-view, you can actually watch it like that week.
Okay. So I mean,
continue.
That's kind of my points, and I wanted to make it short and sweet to the point. It's cheaper for the consumer, the potential for the business to make more money, and the portability of watching pay-per-view for the consumer. So it's a win-win-win for it having on a streaming service. But you got anything else before we close out the debate?
Well, I was going to ask you this question to go along with your point. Do you honestly think, if you really do the numbers of quote-unquote $10 a month, if you're paying that, because of the quote-unquote free 30-day trial, are you really making money? Are you really having paid subscribers to that? Or are you literally having the potential of 2 million interested, only 1.7 paid?
Well, I mean, you do make a good point that a lot of people make the argument with the WWE Network. You do get a 30-day free trial, but that's a loss leader in business. You give them a little taste of it, and then maybe they stick around after that 30 days, and they pay that $9.99, and you have more profit. Because if you look at the WWE Network, they have at least 1 million subscribers at $9.99. They're making $10 million before, I'm sure, having to pay whatever they have to pay for the server.
Depends on who's watching too.
Yeah.
And plus, you have to deal with the whole problem situation as far as like the streaming and the buffering and all of that. And then stuff can always go wrong. Of course, we can say that for pay-per-view because that's happened before. But look at the streaming services and look at the WWE Network in particular. How many times has it went wrong on the WWE Network?
Okay, good points. Well, you guys decide. Do you think Mr. Cornbread won the argument, or do you think that I won the argument? You can vote on Twitter, and I will give you our social media at the end of the show, but don't go anywhere. Our top 5 moments from this past week are coming up next.
This is Brad Hargett, and you're listening to the Power of Pro Wrestling podcast.
Welcome back to the show. Brace yourselves. It's now time for our top 5. With all the exciting action that happened this past week, we're going to be counting down our top 5 favorite moments from 5 to 1, starting with number 5.
Well, we're in the Christmas holiday, so let's just stick on with the theme. My number 5, I never ever like to put this at the bottom of the list just because I'm big fans of both these guys. But my number 5 will have to go to Kevin Owens and AJ Styles from SmackDown the day after Christmas. Now, these two always have incredible matches, but this made the top 5 simply for the fact that now Kevin Owens, not Jinder Mahal, Kevin Owens now has himself in a position to where he can win the WWE Championship. So that's my number 5 just for that. What's yours?
Well, I mean, I hate to play copycat here because we always make the running joke, hey, are you looking off my paper and stuff, but that's kind of my number 5. I hated putting it down so far because Kevin Owens and AJ Styles, I'm a fan of both of them. They were great indie workers. I mean, both were just last year
champion.
You had coming in to Fastlane, you had Kevin Owens, who's Universal Champion. You had
Absolutely.
WWE champion, AJ Styles, going to the Royal Rumble. So at one point, they both were champion. And so it's just sad that I put this match so low. I think had it had a no interference from Sami Zayn, I think that would have made the match a lot better. But these two guys,
they know each other very well,
yeah,
I would say.
Yeah, and I mean also the fact of they had a terrible feud earlier in 2017 over the U.S. title. Oh, it's sad to see it not being a much more featured feud than what it is.
Which resulted in a Madison Square Garden incident to where AJ Styles won that title at MSG.
Yeah, so I mean these two are capable of putting on a good match. And I think it had not been for the Shane McMahon and the Sami Zayn factors, I think maybe this match would have been a little bit higher.
I think so too.
But I mean, there were just moments from Raw and SmackDown that I think very much eclipsed this being higher on the top 5. But that's my number 5 moment for the week.
Number 4.
My number 4, I'm going to Monday Night Raw Christmas night. And surprisingly, it's a championship match. But surprisingly enough, it's not the tag team. My number 4 will go to the Intercontinental Championship. The two non-related Samoans, that being Roman Reigns and Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe, the very experienced veteran that he is, versus now the WWE experienced Roman Reigns. The match was great and all. The thing that really concerned me was when Samoa Joe hit the elbow suicida, and then the left arm of Roman Reigns literally just stretched straight. And the fact that Roman Reigns got himself disqualified so that Joe could win the match. And to me, I think this match, just seeing where Roman Reigns and Samoa Joe are right now at the moment, it's almost as if since Reigns has won that Reigns has won that Intercontinental Championship for the Miz, it's almost as if the Universal Championship is taking the proverbial back seat to where the Intercontinental Championship is taking the more forward approach. That's my number 4. What's up your number 4 sleeve, that is?
Well, you made some good points with your number 4 between the two, and that match would have been my number 4.
Go for it.
But my number 4 is actually going to be... It's going to be the tag team title match from Raw between Rollins and Jordan versus The Bar. Now, I would have picked Reigns and Samoa Joe for my number 4 spot, but just for the fact of it ending with a disqualification, I think it was a good match, I feel. But
right.
The Rollins and Jordan and pairing, kind of the odd couple pairing, beating The Bar and winning the tag team titles just for the shock factor. And it was, I feel, a pretty good match. They did close the show out. It was the main event of Raw for Christmas. So, I mean, that's what I think. The reason why I think I put it as number 4 was a good match. And then just the tag titles changing hands between Rollins and Jordan. I know that wasn't the plan, probably. They wanted maybe Ambrose and Rollins to take the tag titles back. But, I mean, it's an interesting pairing with Rollins and Jordan. It's an odd couple situation, so that's why I put it as number 4.
But you cannot forget the fact that of why, and I say that loosely, why Jason Jordan was inserted in that situation. It was because of what happened to Dean Ambrose.
Yeah, that's true. So I mean, and with all that surrounding, just like I said, Rollins and Jordan pairing together to face The Bar and winning the tag titles was my number 4 moment for the week.
Number 3.
Your number 4 became my number 3 for the shock factor. And it went back to the point I made during your number 4, is the whole Samoa Joe taking out Ambrose, and everybody was really almost almost like a frenzy to see Rollins and Reigns, since they were former champions together, really team up yet again. But because of the shock factor of I'm going to go ahead and say it, arrogant Jason Jordan now partnering with Seth Rollins, who bottom line is on a way different platform, and you're going against The Bar. I don't consider them a tag team, despite the fact that they were champions and that, they're a makeshift team. But the shock factor, this became my number 3 simply for the fact that it was a shock factor to even see Jason Jordan trying to work well with anybody. And to be honest, I literally gave them no chance when I watched this episode in the main event. I literally did not give him any chance, but knowing WWE as it is, this literally reminds me of Ring of Honor 2002 and Impact Wrestling 2002, where you literally had a whole lot of teams that really did not really get along a whole lot, ended up becoming champions. And that's throwback WWE. So your number 4 became my number 3. What is yours?
Well, my number 3, I'm actually going to Ring of Honor, and it is the main event from the Ring of Honor show, and it is the 5-on-5 match where you had Team Dalton versus Team Cody.
Oh, yeah, the surprise. The Christmas surprise main event.
Yeah, so, I mean, I just loved it for the fact of they never told you until the main event who was going to be on each person's team, and then just the odd pairings that you got there. Like you had Silas Young on Team Dalton, and those two had a feud earlier in 2017, and then you had Marty Scurll, the villain, on Team Dalton, and just you had unique pairings. So, I mean, I liked it. It was a very entertaining match, and then like what they did between Marty and Cody was just entertaining as well. So, I mean, that's why it's my number 3, and just entertaining match. You had interactions between Chris Sabin and Jonathan Gresham, who are part of Search and Destroy, and
still are.
So, I mean, it was just an entertaining match, and just the surprise factor, just the odd pairings, everything about it. It was just a very entertaining match. So that's why I had to put it as my number 3 moment for the week. Number 2.
My number 2 would have been the Dogs versus Flip Gordon and Simon Grimm. Especially,
where do you think you're going?
Well, wrong opponent, but yes. It would have been my number 2 simply for the fact that this is Simon Grimm's return to television, to cable, and to broadcast television. That would have been my number 2, but this number 2 supersedes it, and it goes back to Monday Night Raw. And that is John Cena versus Elias. I love the opening segment and all, especially with John Cena interacting with Elias. I love that whole entire segment and all. The thing that really did, and to me, the reason why this was my number 2 is the push, and I know we discussed this off the air. It is the push or the elevation or the evolution of Elias, because he has been really, really stepping up his game big time. And to step up your game with somebody who has literally the magnitude of John Cena, regardless of what anybody thinks of him, when it comes to match quality and all, that's the guy you want to be in the ring with, and that's John Cena. I would love for this to happen with AJ Styles or anybody else, but it happened with John Cena, and the fact that Elias learned from John Cena or really how to elevate yourself made this my number 2. Even though John Cena won the match, as most would say, but to me, this elevated the stock of Elias even up to status of where he could be Universal Champion. That's my number 2. What you got?
Well, my number 2, we're going to play copy-paste. It's the exact same thing.
Really?
John Cena and Elias from Monday Night Raw.
Wow.
Oh, and I mean, this to me was the highlight of Monday Night Raw. It started commercial free on Christmas night, and to have John Cena come out and like just all the interaction, the hot Chicago crowd made it great, and then the Elias.
He's famous in that building.
Yeah, having Elias come out, and then just the interaction between John Cena and Elias there in the promo, and like for the first few minutes of Raw, it was entertaining and great.
I loved it.
Right, and then you have it turn into a match and just a very good competitive match. You did have a botch or two in it where Elias was going for the drift away. He kind of stopped, so it made wrestling look fake and choreographed, but it was still overall a good match. And just
he made some rookie mistakes, no question about it.
So I mean, it was just a very good match, very entertaining. It was probably the highlight of Monday Night Raw, other than the tag title match there at the end. So like I said, from the strength of the opening promo going into the match and just having a very good, competitive, entertaining match is why I had to put it on number 2.
And the craziest thing is about both of our picks at that number 2 slot is the fact that no matter what John Cena could come up with, Elias had a counter for it. That's what really, to me, I think elevated and upped his stock. He had a counter for everything that Cena was going for.
Yeah, and to add this point to you, since we're talking about Elias was the last person I thought that would succeed on, or that I would like on the main roster when he got called
I
up.
felt the same way.
But I have egg on my face because he is such a great performer, or he knows how to work a crowd. And I was like, just recently listening to an interview where Triple H was talking about NXT call-ups and stuff like that, and he mentioned Elias specifically, how he thought that character wouldn't really work in NXT, but it would work on the main roster, and how he would work with him to kind of get him ready for the main roster. And I mean, I think he's one of the success stories of NXT, because very few guys from NXT, when they get called up, have been successful.
I think he's a success story of 2017. I think he.
Braun more than him, but
you have to put Elias right up there, almost as a close number 2. You have to.
Number 1.
My number 1, yeah. What was on your list became my number 1. And it is the surprise Christmas 10-man main event. That's my number 1. And, of course, of all the great points you mentioned, and you talk about Search and Destroy, when we really talk about what really was on opposite sides, Cody and the villain.
The villain.
That was on opposite sides. And for the fact that this happened, and, of course, with Dalton Castle being the new Ring of Honor World Champion and not appearing on January 4th, that really kind of hindered Cody's and Ring of Honor's plans right there, especially with him winning the title. But I love the fact that you had a flying punishment, for crying out loud. You had Silas and Dalton on the same team. They ended up getting the win, by the way. You had them on the same team. And the fact that the villain Marty Scurll and Cody, after the match, they finally walked back to the locker room together. This match was very entertaining. I love the counters and all of it, and dueling cartwheels by Cody and Hanson. That's what stole the show for me right there. It was very competitive. That's my number 1. I had it as one of my match of the year candidates. Your number 1 is?
Well, I guess that's where our opinions are going to differ. That's why I put it as number 3. It was still a good, entertaining match, and I'm not knocking it, but the Cena and Elias was better. But there was one match on WWE TV on the day after Christmas that stole the show, and that's my number 1. It is the Triple Threat Tag Match to start off SmackDown Live on the 26th of December, and it was between American Alpha, or Benjables, as Mr. Brian Zane likes to call them, on the New Day and Rusev Day in English. And I mean, just the promo segments, one right after the other, but the match more than anything is what stole the show. Oh, the reason why it's number 1 is because they made you believe, although I knew they were going to let Benjables, or whatever you want to call them, win the match, you really honestly could believe that Rusev Day might take it, New Day could win it, or American Beta, whatever you want to call them, could take it. Very good competitive match, and the Chicago crowd were chanting, "This is awesome." That should tell you something about the quality of the match. If the Chicago crowd is telling you this is awesome, it is an awesome match. So that is my number 1 moment for the week.
And the thing about that, you brought up that triple threat match, triple threat tag team match. The fact that it wasn't New Day that won it, and it wasn't Rusev and English that won it. It was Gable and Shelton that won it. It literally tells me, in my opinion, I still think that, of the two Raw and SmackDown, I still think that SmackDown does have a little bit better tag team division than Monday Night Raw. And notice I said a little bit better because New Day, they're in a league of their own. Usos, oh my goodness. Ever since they went from pretty boy, colorful babyish, to now having that attitude.
Yeah, that's
that's what's really has elevated them.
Very much a change in gimmick. The street thug, different attitude.
Absolutely. And I think all the other tag teams have really been elevated just because of that New Day Usos rivalry.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got the odd pairing like we talked about with Rollins and Jordan. You have Rusev and Aiden English. Who saw that? That would be entertaining.
Absolutely. And it ended up being a lot better for those two because they ended up beating the tag team champions.
Yeah, and I mean, you also have, like you mentioned, you have New Day, Usos, the Benjables, Rusev Day, New Day.
If
Tyler Breeze, the Fashion Police, as we call them.
Right.
The Bludgeon Brothers. You have such a great depth, it feels like, on SmackDown's tag team division that Raw has nothing on them.
Now, before we go to break, do you honestly think that maybe, just that core on SmackDown, do you think they can maybe finally get the Ascension back to where they need to be, like they were in NXT when they were dominant, especially now with the 2018 really here and all this new influx of tag teams coming back, especially with Raw having the Revival back?
Yeah, so I mean,
do you think it should elevate Ascension? Should Ascension really go back to really being the tag team that they're supposed to be?
I think they can with this feud with the Bludgeon Brothers. What the Fashion Police are doing with the Bludgeon Brothers, I think if you stop making them a comedy act, act and let them be serious and let them fight the Bludgeon Brothers on the Fashion Police's behalf, I think you can rehab the Ascension and get them back to a credible tag team. But that's all the time we have for this segment. It's time for our final commercial break. But stay tuned. Rapid Fire is coming up next.
Hey, this is Kevin Lancaster, and you're listening to the Power of Pro Wrestling podcast.
Welcome back to the show. It's now time for the fastest segment of the show, Rapid Fire. For this edition of Rapid Fire, we'll be giving our predictions on who will win the WWE Championship in 2018. So let's start with...
This is going to be good.
Rusev.
If done properly, yes, I do see Rusev winning the championship. If executed properly, if they really have the proper build for Rusev and they don't pull another Jinder Mahal like they done in 2017, which made no sense at all. If they really build Rusev as a credible contender and really execute him to the fullest of their abilities, I see Rusev at least in the middle of 2018 being the champion.
So I can say it's a possibility for Rusev to be champion. I mean, he's definitely getting over. I don't know if they're going to break up Rusev Day between him and Aiden English.
I don't think they're going to break it up. I think they're still going to be almost like a package deal. It's going to be much more of Aiden English really helping Rusev, but continue.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I could definitely see it happening. I don't know if, maybe Aiden English becomes the mouthpiece for Rusev, and that's how they get him to the WWE Championship. But I definitely can see this as a true possibility. How about Big E?
He'll come close, but I say no. Even though he's had the Intercontinental Championship before, it's really difficult for anybody of that threesome known as New Day to really get past the hump. To me, I say if Kofi couldn't get past the hump and really get into the main event scene, I don't think you will see that with Big E. So that has to be a no in my case.
I'm in agreement with you when it comes to Big E. It's very hard for me to see him being WWE champion this year, especially since he is with the New Day. I still think they have a lot left for that group, so I don't know that I will see Big E as WWE champion this year in 2018. How about the King of Strong Style, Shinsuke Nakamura?
This one's really tough. Nakamura will be champion only if, only to counter either Okada, Omega, or Naito, or even, depending on his stay, possibly Chris Jericho. That's one of the few times I would actually see Nakamura as champion. I do I do think he can be the champion. I think he should be the champ because WWE has been known to quote unquote break a lot of records, so to speak. And of course, they broke it with New Day. If Nakamura was to become champion, he'll actually be the first recognized Japanese champion because they're not even recognizing Tatsumi the Dragon Fujinami as a former WWE champion for some odd reason. But I think Nakamura does have a chance. I say if you give him AJ Styles and let them go, it'll be an instant classic. So I would say if done properly, Nakamura could be the champion. But he doesn't need to be the champion just to counter New Japan. He needs to be the champion that can actually carry it.
I definitely think we're going to see Nakamura as champion in 2018, and I think it will be at WrestleMania potentially because I think we'll see Styles Nakamura, and I think very well Nakamura could take the title off Styles at that point. So I definitely could see Nakamura winning the title. Let's move on, and let's not hinder this guy. How about Jinder Mahal? Do you think he regains the title in 2018?
No. I honestly don't think so. I think because of the way that he was handled in 2017 we both saw it. Let's not beat around the bush here. We both saw the fact that he was literally on a quote unquote losing streak. A losing streak. Flat out jobbers. They didn't even build him to even a mid-card championship. They decided just to throw him in there in a four-way with four capable guys. Four capable guys. They allowed him to win it, and all of a sudden, 2 matches later, he's the champ with no build or anything. I think WWE's gonna learn their lesson here. Don't try to duplicate or try to copycat what someone else is doing. Stick with your main deal. Focus on your talent. Get them prepared to where they could be good stars and good money drawers. Jinder was not that. He wasn't. You may appeal to the whole Indian community of the 1.5 billion. You can appeal to that, but there's a different way to appeal it. And Jinder being WWE champion does not work in that case. So it'll be a shocker if he does become champion. I don't see it here.
I agree with you on Jinder Mahal. I don't see him being WWE champion this year for the fact of what happened. Him being a bad 2017 year. I mean, he held the title for several months, but I mean, he did not help increase business. People were not interested in him as champion.
Absolutely.
Had they have started him in the mid card and worked him up, maybe he could have been champion here in 2018. But I mean, they're going to have to do a lot of rehab for Jinder Mahal if he's going to win the WWE title here in 2018. So I definitely want to say no on him. How about we go to Aiden English?
Mid-card champion, somewhat of a possibility. Probably a U.S. title run in the future. But as far as being the main champion, I would go to the bank on this one with an absolute flat-out 100% no on this one.
I agree with you on Aiden English. Maybe a mid-card championship, maybe the tag titles with Rusev this year. I don't really see him winning the WWE championship in 2018, so I agree there. And to end it, how about the Viper, Randy Orton?
With all the credentials that Randy Orton has in his pocket and on his resume, this was really tough because look at how he became the champion under questionable circumstances when literally you had Bray Wyatt all the way at the top. Cena became champion at the Royal Rumble last year only for the opportunity for Bray Wyatt to win the title. Wyatt wins the title and then loses it at WrestleMania, not get his rematch for his championship rematch. He got the rematch because we talked off the air about this. He got the rematch, but he's kind of been falling a little bit flat. And that was because of the quote-unquote rise of Randy Orton. And some will argue, had Randy Orton not been champion, Jinder Mahal wouldn't have been champion. So I'll say if Orton becomes the champion, it'll probably it has to be a storyline that matters. And if he becomes champion again, to me, I don't think he needs to get the championship again. But more than likely, because of family ties and all of that, he may end up winning the title. Surprisingly enough. So, to me, I don't think he should. I really don't see him doing it, but this is WWE. Things could happen.
I definitely could see him as champion and WWE in 2018 wearing the WWE Championship. If he's not drifted over to Raw in a Superstar Shakeup or something like that, I definitely could see him winning the WWE title again sometime in 2018. It wouldn't necessarily have to be a long reign, but I can definitely see him winning the WWE title in 2018.
Who should he take the belt from? Should he take the belt from AJ Styles, or if Kevin Owens has the title?
I mean, it could, maybe he beats Kevin Owens for it. I really can't say, but I think he will be WWE Champion 2018. But that's all the time we have for this episode of the podcast. You can check out our social media outlets. So we'll start with you, Cornbread. Where can people find you on the social web?
Social web would be facebook.com/Cornbread. My name is Christopher David Heineken. And you can also find me on Twitter at Chris Heineken1. And Friday nights, you can find me in person at the hottest place in Osceola, that being the MCW Arena at Mid-Southern Championship Wrestling, 1098 West Kaiser Street, right off of I-55 there in Osceola, Arkansas. That's Friday night. Saturdays, you can find me in person at Out of Control Wrestling, OCW. We'll be taping for syndication and for YouTube every single Saturday night, 7:05 start time. That's 8:05 Eastern, 609 Southeast Gibson. And if you are traveling on 63 or 555, just exit right there or turn off of where the Exxon gas station is and take that road straight up, and you will find the big red building right behind Mike's Tire Shop. That's where I am. Where can they find you?
Okay, well, you can find me on Facebook. It's Robert Lee Red Jr. You can search me that way. I am on Twitter at Robert Red Jr. I have Instagram, I believe is Robert Red Jr. as well. I am on YouTube. It's youtube.com/user/the Robert Red, where I'm going to hopefully make some more video content this year that you can check out. The show now has a Patreon that you can catch us at. It's patreon.com/PPWP. And go and support the show, guys. For different reward tiers that I'm going to update, you can get either early access to the show, just a lot of great perks. You can voice your opinion, let us know about the show, stuff like that. You can also do that on iTunes, where you can search the Power Pro Wrestling Podcast.
Absolutely.
Ask and you subscribe, and it will download the latest episodes of the podcast, and you can leave us a review. We'll greatly appreciate it, because it will help to boost the profile of the show and give us some great feedback on how we can and make the show even better. Or you can search us on Google Play as well, The Power Pro Wrestling. Hit subscribe, and it downloads the latest episodes on there as well. You can get direct access to the show on Shout Engine, which is shoutengine.com/The Power Pro Wrestling. So you can definitely check us out on there. And I want to thank Cornbread for joining me for this episode of the podcast.
And thank you very much. And I also want to add, we're not a quote-unquote publicly funded podcast like everybody else is. We survive and we thrive on your support. Your support literally helps this podcast keeps growing and getting better and better, and not just for the hosts and not just for the guests such as myself, but for you, the audience. Your participation and your involvement in this show is really, really not only, and it's not something that we just literally just say on the air, hey, we want your support. We really mean it from our hearts. We need your support. Anytime you get involved with us, get involved in this show, whatever comments you leave, we will love to have them, because your comments, your feedback it thrives us. It keeps us going in the positive direction and helps us to present you and get you set up for another great week of the podcast and any and everything going on in the wrestling world. So, hey, we would love to have your support. Your support is very, very important to us. If you want yourself a great New Year's gift or anything, Christmas, whatever holiday you celebrate, make the Power Pro Wrestling Podcast the ultimate, all capital letters, the ultimate gift for not only you, your family, your friends, but for anybody that is a sports or wrestling fan. Make this your ultimate destination.
And with that, thank you guys for listening to the Power Pro Wrestling Podcast. We will catch you next time.